Welcome to another tutorial video. We're going to be discussing the topic of the cash flow from operations section of the cash flow statement here. Now, the reason I'm covering this is because if you look at accounting textbooks and a lot of online articles and coverage, they make it seem like this is the simplest topic in the world and that you just need to know a formula or two and it's all very simple and straightforward and there really isn't much to say about it. But in my opinion, it's actually one of the trickier parts of understanding the cash flow statement and also modifying the financial statements and setting them up to create forecasts in 3 statement models. So if you want this tutorial in writing along with some screenshots, PDFs, and the Excel models and files we're going through here, you can go to this URL. Again, I'll pin it below the video as the first comment. It's on our accounting page, cash flow from operations. We will cover 3 companies here: Target in the US, Watches of Switzerland, which despite the name is actually based in the UK, and then Telstra, which is a telecoms company in Australia. I'll start with the short answer and then we'll go into the details. Cash flow from operations normally starts with net income or after-tax profits, then it adjusts for non-cash income and expenses that have affected net income, then it reflects the change in working capital, which could be either positive or negative. It represents the recurring cash flow before CapEx and other investing and financing activities. Now, there's also the direct method for creating the cash flow statement and for the cash flow from operations section. And if the cash flow statement is built this way, it'll just show the direct cash inflows and outflows in this section rather than starting with net income and adjusting from there. So I have an example up here for Telstra, this Australian company which does just that. If you look at its cash flow statement, in cash flow from operations, they're showing receipts from customers and payments to suppliers and employees. So this is a cash flow statement built using the direct method with a few other small adjustments here, but they're not starting with net income or EBITDA or operating income or anything like that and adjusting. One way to calculate cash flow from operations is to start with net income, add back depreciation and amortization, and then any other non-cash adjustments that have affected net income. Then you factor in the deferred taxes, which could be positive or negative, and then you factor in the change in working capital, which could also be positive or negative. You could also start cash flow from operations with EBITDA. And in that case, you will subtract the cash net interest expense, the cash taxes. You will add back potentially some non-cash adjustments, but you will not add back the depreciation and amortization because you're starting with EBITDA. So you may add back a few smaller things, but not the normal main largest non-cash adjustment. And then as with the definition above, you will factor in the change in working capital as well. Now, this sounds very easy, but complications come up because the non-cash adjustments can be tricky. Also, many non-US based companies have very confusing cash flow statements. Many people claim that cash flow from operations and EBITDA are quite similar, or that cash flow from operations is a proxy for EBITDA, or EBITDA is a proxy for cash flow from operations. But if you actually look at real companies, the numbers tend to be quite different in real life. Cash flow from operations mostly represents the current assets and current liabilities on a company's balance sheet. It is used in almost all valuations and financial models, but it's more as an intermediate step. It's not really a valuation metric or multiple in most cases, and it's also not great for comparison purposes. It's sort of like when you bake a cake, you could go and eat all the sugar that goes into the cake yourself when you're just gathering the ingredients, but you probably want the finished cake, and it's kind of the same thing with cash flow from operations. Yes, you could consume it and use it as is, but you normally want the finished products that actually make use of cash flow from operations in a sensible way. So if your cash flow from operations section on the financial statement starts with a metric like net income or EBITDA, there are a few checks that you can make to ensure that you are using the correct setup and formulas when you create projections or when you value a company or when you set up something like an LBO model or a merger model. First off, cash taxes must always be deducted in cash flow from operations, either directly or indirectly. In some cases, you will just subtract these from something like EBITDA. If the cash flow statement starts with net income, you will have some type of deferred tax adjustment, which shows you the difference between book taxes and cash taxes. This section should also subtract the full cash net interest expense. It should always be in here. Again, it could be direct or indirect, but it needs to be reflected there in some way. It always has to reflect the change in working capital. It could be positive or negative depending on how working capital changes, but it needs to be there. You should not have anything related to CapEx, financial investments, debt, or equity issuances or repayments or anything like that. This is the wrong section for all of those. So if they're here, you need to reclassify them and move them out. And then finally, the non-cash adjustments that you include need to make sense for the starting metric. So if you start with net income, you probably have a lot more in the way of non-cash adjustments that need to be there. But if you start with EBITDA, you probably have many fewer non-cash adjustments that need to be there. So that is the short answer. Let's go through this in a little bit more detail now and go through the company by company examples. So I'll start with a few examples of real life cash flow from operations sections from Target, Watches of Switzerland, and Telstra, and I'll show you the adjustments we typically make. Then we'll talk about why CFO is not an ideal valuation metric and is not commonly used in valuation multiples. And then I will show you some exceptions to this rule and how in certain industries you do actually see cash flow from operations used. I will show you some variations that come up in oil and gas specifically as well. So let's go through a few real life examples here. There is no universal process that works for every single company, but you can use the checklist that I just provided as a starting point. We're going to start with Target because there are pretty minimal adjustments here. So here's what Target's cash flow statement looks like from the financial statements. And just to save some time, I've just used the image import feature in Excel to bring this in. Overall, this is pretty straightforward. Net income deducts book taxes, and then there's an adjustment for deferred income taxes. So we know that cash taxes are reflected here. The change in working capital is clearly reflected here because it's shown here in separate line items. The cash net interest expense is also reflected here because net income has deducted the interest expense and it doesn't appear there are any non-cash adjustments to it. And there's also nothing relating to CapEx, investments, debt, or equity. The non-cash reversals make sense because they consist of things like depreciation and amortization, stock-based compensation, non-cash losses and gains, and all of these actually affect net income. So for Target, this would be pretty simple. We would simply start with net income. We would still add back the depreciation and amortization. We would still have the deferred tax adjustment right here. And then for the change in working capital, we would probably just sum up all these items instead of showing them separately just to save a bit of time with the projections, but we would do something like this. Now, for the historicals, we would leave in the stock-based compensation and the non-cash losses and gains, but in the projections, we would zero out both of these. So I'm just doing this because we don't actually have a forecast here. In real life, we would leave the historicals intact, and then we would just set these to 0 in the future periods. Stock-based compensation, because this distorts the share count and the ownership, which we don't want in a valuation or merger or LBO model type scenario. Non-cash losses and gains, we would zero out simply because these are non-recurring, and you almost always want to assume 0 for these going forward. So that's Target, the simplest one here. Watches of Switzerland is more complicated. There are some issues with cash flow from operations and also their free cash flow calculation. So let's go over to the next tab here. If you pull up the PDF for Watches of Switzerland Group, this company has a summary cash flow statement, which actually starts with EBITDA. So it is using the indirect method, but it's not starting with net income. It's actually starting with EBITDA, and it's setting up the free cash flow and cash flow from operations a little bit differently. So let's take a look at this and then go through the checklist. The cash taxes are directly shown right here. They label it cash taxes, so that part of the checklist is fine. The change in working capital is also shown directly here, so we can check off that item on our list. That's in here, so that's fine. The cash net interest expense, though, is problematic. And for some strange reason, they are deducting this below the cash flow from operations line, and they're counting it toward free cash flow, but not cash flow from operations, so we need to fix that. There doesn't appear to be anything related to CapEx, investments, debt, or equity here, so there are no issues there. And then the non-cash reversals all seem to make sense. We are starting with EBITDA, so we're not going to add back D&A. It's already added back here. They do add back stock-based comp. They do have this line for JV or associate net income. We can keep that. And then pension contributions. This can sometimes be a non-cash adjustment. Sometimes it can be an additional cash contribution from the company, but this is normally counted as more of an operational item, so we can keep it right there. It is also a little bit weird how they're counting maintenance CapEx, but not growth CapEx toward their free cash flow. So we would probably fix that as well. So our fixed version would be as follows. We will still start with adjusted EBITDA. And then stock-based compensation, we will zero out. This is just standard practice in any type of projection model. Certainly in a valuation or any type of LBO model where the ownership matters, we'd zero this out in the forecasts. And then we would include the JV or associate net income. We would include the change in working capital and the pension contributions. So all that's fine. And then of course the cash taxes, we'd also want to count in any type of forecast here and project these separately. And then one reclassification here is that they are not putting the net interest expense in cash flow from operations. So we're going to change that and link to it here so that it is part of the cash flow from operations number. And then this isn't really part of the tutorial, but in my opinion, their free cash flow calculation is off. So we are going to count both maintenance capex and growth capex. Acquisitions is a bit of a question mark, so I'm actually going to enter this as question marks right here because it depends a little bit on the company's business plan. We don't know if it's planning to continue making these acquisitions into the future. If they are, we would probably count them and deduct them as part of free cash flow, but if they really are one-time items, we'd probably just zero them out. So it depends a little bit, and we would need a little bit more information to decide on what to do for this one. And so that gets us to our free cash flow and our cash flow from operations. So that's Watches of Switzerland. For Telstra, this is the company that uses the direct cash flow statement, so we need to find the indirect version first and then make a series of adjustments. Now, if you look at the company's filings, it's pretty easy. You can go down to note 2.6 to find a reconciliation, and they have a lot of different line items here. Some they are reclassifying, some they are claiming are non-cash adjustments, and then of course they have the standard section for the change in working capital down here. So again, to save some time, I've already entered these into Excel with the first item on our checklist. It's unclear exactly what they're doing with cash taxes here. However, they are starting with net income and they don't have any major adjustments for deferred taxes. So it's probably a safe bet to say that the book taxes are pretty close to the cash taxes here. This is something that requires some further investigation, but for now we're going to leave it. The change in working capital is clearly included because they have the changes in operating assets and liabilities right here. The cash net interest expense, they're doing something very strange and adding it back. They're effectively reversing it and adding it back here so that they can then list this in the cash flow from financing section. We don't do that. We don't recommend doing that. And so we are going to delete these lines. And then for the non-cash reversals, most of these are pretty standard. Gains and losses you're always going to see. Depreciation and amortization you're always going to see. Stock-based comp you're always going to see if you're starting with net income. So these all appear to be pretty standard. Items like impairments, a part of the pension expense is non-cash. So all those are fairly standard and straightforward. So the version that we'd use in the projections would start with net income. For the gains and losses, we would just zero these out and set these to zero in the forecast period. We do the same thing for the lease transactions. Stock-based comp we'd zero out, impairments we would zero out, and then D&A we would add back. These items are the revenue of a dealer or leaser and government grants received. I think it's fine to list these as long as we actually reclassify them further down on the financial statements. So I would still recommend including these in this section because we're going to reclassify them later on. So it's fine to list them right here. And then JV/associate net income, and then the defined benefit pension expense. So we do want to include both of these. And then the effective FX rate changes and other items, we want both of these as well. And then for the change in working capital, the only change I would make here is that I would just consolidate everything into a single line item just to save a bit of space. And then we have that. And I can sum up all of these to get to our cash flow from operations numbers. And again, we wouldn't actually change the historical numbers here. This is a bit of a fantasy. We wouldn't zero out anything, but for projection purposes, this is what we do. We set these types of line items to zero for the reasons discussed earlier. So those are a few examples of how you might have to adjust a company's cash flow from operations in real life. I want to discuss why CFO is not an ideal valuation metric now. Usually with the valuation metrics and multiples, you want to use them to either allow for an easier comparison of companies or to approximate a company's cash flows more easily, either to all the investors or to just the equity investors. So unlevered free cash flow is for all the investors, levered free cash flow is for just the equity investors. The problem is that cash flow from operations does neither one well. It's really the worst of both worlds because it includes a huge range of non-standard adjustments, as you just saw, but it also excludes CapEx, which is one of the most significant cash flow line items that pretty much every single company in the world will have. So really, you're not getting a great comparison here, and you're also really not approximating cash flows all that well with this metric. Some people claim that CFO and EBITDA are close, but if you actually look at the numbers, I have Best Buy and Target up here from 1 year. There's about a 50% difference between cash flow from operations and EBITDA for these very standard retail companies. And so you will see even bigger differences in other industries. And so in my view, these are not really proxies for each other at all. So if you really want a true comparison, use EBITDA, or use a metric like EBITDA minus CapEx if you want to factor in a company's capital spending. But cash flow from operations is really not the metric to use if your goal is a proper comparison between different types of companies. All that said, I do want to cover a few possible exceptions here at the end as well, and say that in some industries you will see multiples like equity value over cash flow from operations, or price per share over cash flow from operations per share, the P to CFO multiple. And in some industries like oil and gas, you'll see variations like adjusted funds flow from operations, also known as AFFO, especially for Canadian oil and gas companies, and many non-US companies use this type of metric as well. So I'm bringing up an example here for this fairness opinion from Morgan Stanley for ConocoPhillips' acquisition of Marathon Oil. They are using EBITDAX multiples. EBITDAX is a variant of EBITDA, but then they also have cash flow from operations multiples. And if you look at how they've defined it, essentially they start with EBITDAX and make some adjustments, but it's very similar to cash flow from operations. So they are using it in this oil and gas context. I also have this other example for this Canadian oil and gas company, Valuation, where they create this metric, adjusted funds flow from operations, which starts with cash flow from operating activities and then makes a few adjustments, such as adding back or reversing the change in working capital, transaction costs, and decommissioning expenditures. The basic logic here is that sometimes you do want to capture a company's capital structure and cash taxes, but normalize or ignore differences in CapEx between different companies. So that's the logic for using these types of metrics in this case. Our view is that it's still a bit silly because if you want a comparison, just use net income and the PE multiple. And then if you want something that better approximates cash flow, just use free cash flow instead. So in our view, these types of metrics are still not that useful. We'd rather see net income or free cash flow or levered free cash flow or unlevered free cash flow or anything that does a better job of actually approximating a company's real cash flow. That's about it for this tutorial. Let's do a quick recap and summary. I started by showing you a few examples for Target, Watches of Switzerland, and Telstra, how to start with a company's cash flow from operations and then make some adjustments for use when forecasting it. We also went through that checklist. You can get it in the Excel file. Check for cash taxes, the change in working capital, cash net interest expense. Make sure there's nothing related to CapEx, investments, debt, or equity, and make sure all the non-cash reversals and adjustments make sense given the starting metric, whether it's net income or EBITDA or something else. We talked about why CFO is not an ideal valuation metric because it's not great for comparing companies due to all the non-standard adjustments, and it's also quite far from their actual true cash flow. That said, you will still see it in some industry-specific contexts. In oil and gas, some banks and bankers do like to use it, and you will see variations like adjusted funds flow from operations in Canada, for example. So that's about it for this tutorial. Hopefully now you know a little bit more about this metric and how to adjust it and how to change around the financial statements when you have to forecast it in three-statement models, valuations, merger models, and LBO models.